And the great thing about controversy, I would protest gravity if I thought it was going to get me buzz.
So that's David Seaman way back in 2008 saying he would protest gravity if it got him enough buzz. That was him doing an interview for his book called Dirty Little Secrets of Buzz, which apparently was originally titled How to Be a Publicity Whore. So that's how I opened the show about David, but I'll be the first to say that if you took something I said 8 or 9 years ago out of context, like I just did, that you could find something pretty embarrassing probably that I said. You could probably find something embarrassing in the last week since I do a live show 4 days a week. So I want to go ahead and say that up front. As far as talking about David Seaman without him being here, I asked him to come on the show. And in fact, I've asked him more than once. You guys have heard me talk about David. I've been following David ever since he started talking about Hillary's health. And I've talked about him and criticized him a little bit on this show without him being here. But I asked him on the show before. I've been introduced to him by email by a third party. I asked him to comment specifically on this, what we're reporting on today, and I've never, ever had a response from him. So I would have preferred that he were here to answer questions about himself rather than me talking about him, but these are some important issues, so I'm going to go ahead and cover them. If you don't know who David Seaman is, he is basically the face of Pizzagate at this point. He has over 150,000 subscribers, and he got a big handful of those talking about Pizzagate. He was one of the first ones to cover it, and he covered it all out. He sold out for it completely. So, and in so doing, he got a lot of subscribers. So let me just do a quick review about how David came onto the scene.
Huffington Post, where I was a contributor, they have revoked my publishing access, and they've deleted both of my articles that were published earlier over the weekend. Both of my articles have been pulled without notice of any kind, just completely deleted from the internet. And both of those articles mentioned Hillary's health.
So that was David last August 28th, explaining how he had his publishing privileges revoked at the Huffington Post after posting a few articles about Hillary's health. Now, I really should point out that David gives the impression that he was fired, and the title for this video, Huffington Post terminated me for questioning Hillary's health, might lead you to believe that he was a staff writer for the Huffington Post, when in fact, just like almost every one of their contributors, he was almost certainly an unpaid blogger, which is what Huffington Post uses for their content. And the writers are happy to work for free because they get the platform to get exposure. So David was not fired from the Huffington Post. And in fact, he still has a profile up on the Huffington Post with all of the rest of his articles. So I thought I'd clear that up first, and now I'll show you what that event, getting booted off the Huffington Post, did for his YouTube channel. This is from socialblade.com, which has publicly available statistics for YouTube channels, and this is David's channel. I'm going to show you this chart here that shows monthly views and monthly subscribers, and you can see he didn't have much going on all the way through July of last year. Pretty minimal traffic on his channel, relatively speaking. And then at the end of August, he had his articles pulled down off Huffington Post, and all of a sudden his traffic exploded. And then he just happened to be on the right side of some controversial topics. He picked Donald Trump early on. He kept talking about Hillary's health, and then Pizzagate. And he went all the way with Pizzagate, and you can see that his subscriber count and his view count also stayed right up there. He built his way all the way up to 150,000 plus subscribers, and he became, like I said, the face of Pizzagate. Now, I did a lot of research to make sure I got this right, especially since David threatened to sue another journalist he claims is writing a hit piece on him. So this is from what I could find publicly available on the internet. That's my disclaimer up front. So as far as I can tell from that research, David has been employed exactly once in what we would consider a traditional job, and that was way back in 2007 when he was hired as an intern with Jezebel, the online media outlet, which was just a startup at the time. Well, he didn't hesitate to make a big splash. Here's a headline about him. Self-promotion guru David Seaman totally got our memo, shat all over it. And this is an article written by the editor at Jezebel saying how she had to fire David Seaman because after they sent him an email saying that the job is not about self-promotion, he promptly staged a free Paris Hilton protest, a fake free Paris Hilton protest, just for media attention, which he got and, again, was promptly fired from his intern position. Some other interesting clues pop up in these articles on Jezebel that give some insights into David's personality, perhaps, at least his personality at the time. And like I said, people can change. If somebody took me 9 years ago, I would say I was a totally different person. But if my current behavior was similar to things I said around that time, then it might be worthwhile to look at. And that's why we're looking at this. So in the email exchanges between David and his boss, this was one of the ways he thought about getting attention to the interns. And one of them was writing about fashion for them in their own words. This is what he said. I found it very interesting. Much like high school clubs, the college newspaper had a stiff barrier to entry, namely some degree of talent or ambition. In lieu of any actual passions or semblance of a personality, it struck me one day that appearance could be crafted and exploited. I wish I could pinpoint the exact moment when this epiphany occurred. That was the moment that David found out that you could pretend to be something, and then people would think you were that something. Here's another article from Jezebel. After being fired, David went out to drinks with his editor, and this is a quote she got from the conversation. "No one reports civilian casualties in Iraq," he mused. "Why don't they do that? Why is it always how many Americans got killed?" Civilian casualties, he explained. That was the type of issue he wanted to use his self-promotional instincts to spotlight. Like one of my chapters is on Cindy Sheehan. She's the type of self-promotional whore who really came from nowhere. She was nobody special, but she became this powerful person. And this is important because David is talking about bringing attention to real, actual issues using his publicity whoring. And someone might find a parallel with what he's doing today. But what really makes this fascinating is who he mentions, which is Cindy Sheehan. Cindy Sheehan, who David calls a publicity whore, became famous after her son was allegedly killed in Iraq. After that, she became a major peace activist and ended up writing 3 books about it. She also shows all the signs of being controlled opposition, which is also interesting in respect to David, but we'll get into that another time. The important thing here is that she exploited the death of her son for her own fame, and apparently David finds this admirable. It also reminds me, unfortunately, of something that came up in one of David's recent videos, one which has been deleted, but which I captured and played on my show.
Let me just explain to you what's happening behind the scenes. So a friend of mine was recently stabbed to death. She was one of my closest friends in my 20s. Did a video commemorating her life. You can go back and look at it. It's a few videos ago. Ashley Jones was her name. So Ashley was one of my best friends throughout my 20s, and her tragic death and the death of her friend in a weird home invasion where a lot of stuff really doesn't add up, a weird home invasion that just doesn't make sense. At first, I didn't think that had anything to do with this, but as I thought about it, my private Facebook has been somehow compromised. The paid trolls have access to it, so they were able to look through my photos before I deactivated it. And if you were to go through my personal Facebook photos, one of the only women around my age who I'm photographed with in those photos, the only woman featured in those photos is pretty much Ashley Jones, because we did so much through my 20s together. She was one of my best friends. So if you were somebody looking to harm me and you had access to my private Facebook and you see all these photos of this woman and I, you would assume maybe we're in a relationship, even though I haven't really kept in touch with her over the last couple of years as much as
as I should have, you would come to that conclusion possibly. So she was stabbed to death. And what's weird is another Pizzagate researcher, actually the woman who went to Pegasus Museum in D.C. for me, that woman, one of her close friends, was recently stabbed to death as well. What did they say? 1 time's a coincidence, 2 times a trend, right? This is weird stuff. And the harassment.
So after David was fired from Jezebel, How to Be a Publicity Whore became Dirty Little Secrets of Buzz, which David published, and you can still find a preview for on Google Books. In this book, David describes himself as, among other things, the founder of Shutterline Interactive, a vehicle for rapidly deploying new publicity stunts. And let me just give you a few highlights that stood out from this preview. Secret number 1, fame and glory, for the company or for yourself. Secret number 2, be outrageous or die. And he references Ann Coulter and says that crazy sells. Secret number 55, sincerity, I really mean it. And here's just from a list of secrets. The first on the list, create real outrage. Then build loyalty at any cost, even if it means less privacy. Be seen as a controversial expert, not an average Joe. Remain down to earth, or at least fake humility. Anticipate the newest stories before others do. And he did that with Pizzagate. To give him credit, I actually said Pizzagate wasn't a thing at first and said David was wrong. So I will give him credit for that. He was first. But that's on his list. Anticipate the newest stories before others do. After publishing that book, I don't have much on David until 2012 when he reappears with an article on Business Insider. And this is called How to Be Insanely Successful. So we find out David's doing pretty well as of July 31st, 2012. The article opens, a reader suggested I do an article on how exactly I created a successful internet business from scratch. Since its inception in 2009, Credit Card Outlaw, which I founded, has helped more than 2.3 million customers. And here you thought I was just some shrill political commentator. The thing is, I don't know much about that business, and David doesn't mention it anywhere else. If you click on the link for Credit Card Outlaw, you get a Google search for compare credit cards. If you type in creditcardoutlaw.com, this is the website that comes up. So there's a question here, whether David was as insanely successful as he claimed in that article, especially since David pops up again on September 6th with a Reddit AMA saying he's running for Congress and he needs money for it. So this Reddit AMA was actually shut down in the middle because David included a link to his fundraising website, but a number of people were excited about his candidacy and he was excited to announce it. Right away, though, some people thought it was odd that in 2012, David was announcing his candidacy for 2014, when congressional elections are every 2 years. But beyond that, David drops out 4 months later. This is from his Google Plus posting on January 15th, announcing his withdrawal from candidacy, 1 year and 10 months before the election would have been. And he gives you a couple excuses for why he did that. I'll read. Without making this a 30-page withdrawal letter, suffice it to say there are powers that get set into motion very quickly once you decide to run. If you are against things like warrantless spying and drone strikes in the TSA, and these powers are set on compromising or destroying you as quickly as possible. You guys know I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Just know that I wouldn't recommend running for federal office to even my worst enemy. Also, there is the unbelievable regulatory and bureaucratic burden. I had to report to 3 different regulatory bodies at the federal level. And some of these bodies have reporting requirements that are different from each other, opaque, and impossible for even the most honest of men to navigate successfully without a team of lawyers and tax attorneys standing beside you. Well, some people were upset that he pulled out early, especially since he raised some money. Reddit user Joshua Kevin Perry commented 4 years ago when David withdrew, he is the fraud Reddit exposed him as. Is he returning the money? Not likely. And as of right now, there is no indication that the money was returned. But this is what user David Seaman AMA had to say about that. Not a penny goes to me. What is left over in the final campaign fund will be contributed to an accredited charity or returned in compliance with FEC regulations. Need to ask my team for more details, but I want the money going to an unambiguously non-political charity, such as a children's hospital. No effing way do I want the money going to a political party. Well, as of right now, I've looked around. Reddit users, vote users, no one seems to have any record of that money being returned or given to charity. But I would have liked to ask David that question himself, as I have no evidence to say one way or the other, besides what people are saying out in the online world. But it's worth pointing out that on July 31st, David was a successful businessman, and September 6th, he needed money to run for Congress, which allegedly was not returned. Well, David went from that fundraising gig to another one in July of 2013, which was to raise money for a morning show he said he was setting up. Here's a post from Google Plus saying the show was 73% funded and asking for more funding. But unlike the political campaign donations, I found where David actually talks about what he did with the money that he raised for his show. In this article on the Huffington Post from August 9th, 2016, written by David Seaman and still available there on HuffPo, called What Happened to Bitcoin and David Seaman. David says he moved to LA from South Florida, where he was running for office, after raising more than $6,000 from his crowdfunding campaign. Well, he says he teamed up with somebody in LA to help him out with it, and it wasn't his fault, but this other guy, who he calls a fraudulent alcoholic, was responsible for squandering most of that money. Well, after that, David still had another chance when Joe Rogan apparently told him that he would be the new politics contributor on his show. But then apparently Joe turned around and stabbed David in the back because the price of Bitcoin had gone down. So this is when things apparently got tough for David, as he couldn't make it economically in LA anymore without a job and having spent all of the money he raised for his political campaign and for his TV show. He ended up moving to Colorado. And in Colorado, he was about to take a job at Walmart when something happened. An email from a longtime reader I read in the parking lot caused me to tell my training manager I'd have to respectfully decline the job offer for greeter. Other life plans. Well, these other life plans were to go to Canada and meet Roy Seabag and learn about the company called BitGold. So that's a lot about David Seaman and a lot about gold money. And I wanted to try to stick to the facts as best as I could, especially since I don't want other people saying things about me that aren't true. And I've had people make hit pieces about me, things you could really call hit pieces. I don't think this is a hit piece. I'm doing out of legitimate concern. And I'm concerned about the money that people have with gold money right now. I'm concerned about that money staying safe and you being able to take it out or being able to get precious metals for it. So I behoove you to look into that if you are considering gold money or if you have money with them. As far as David Seaman is concerned, the main thing is I was approached by someone concerned about him representing Pizzagate and the serious issue known as Pizzagate and the abused children, the children who have died as a result of the issues surrounding Pizzagate, which is much bigger than John Podesta. David wants you to think, it seems like, that it's all about John Podesta and that Donald Trump is somehow solving this problem. He also has some sort of lead that keeps telling him these rings are going to get broken up. I've said on my show a bunch of times, I had somebody call me saying the same thing. And you know what? I didn't report it because I didn't have a credible source. I couldn't get to the source material. So I wasn't about to take somebody's word for it who called in. Now, did that happen to David? I don't know. Is he reporting things properly? Sometimes, for sure. And maybe all the time. You have to decide as far as that goes. Now, I should say, if I'm going to criticize someone else, I don't like talking about myself, but I will. I have no documented credibility. I have no pedigree. I sold cars for the last 12 years before I started making videos, which was just at the end of 2015. So I have no journalistic record. There's no reason people should listen to me. In fact, Although I have no arrest record, I've done drugs in the past, and I'm diagnosed as mentally ill. I'm not afraid of people calling me mentally ill because I know it's a thing that people don't understand, and I'm trying to help people understand what that is. But I was an actor. I should say that. I say this stuff all the time, so it's kind of repetitive, but I just want to say I'm not hiding anything about me. My name's Nathan Stolpman. I'm showing my face, and you can look me up on the internet, and you can find the things people have said about me. So the only message I have for all of this is that what we're seeing, this pedophilia, this abuse of children, which is just on a broad scale, and I'm going to get into it more, it's a sign of sickness. And even this using something like that for fame, glory, for money, that's another sign of that sickness. Now, I can't say that that's what David's doing. I think he genuinely thinks he's doing a good thing. I really do. I think he genuinely thinks that. And I don't want to be hard on him for no reason. But we have to do what's right. The people who do this, we have to do what's right. We have to do it for other people. And we have to remember who the victims are. And people who watch this stuff, it triggers memories. Most of these folks don't have memories of the abuse, but stuff is coming up because of this. So it's really important to remain cognizant of that. So what should I say to you? Make yourself better. Work on yourself. That's all you can do. Work on yourself, spread the word, make other people feel better. Focus on them. Okay, that's the whole piece. Oh, I should say, sorry, I take donations. That's the only way I make money. I can't run ads. David can. My whole account is disabled for monetization. I've showed it on my show before. And I make maybe $500 to $800 a month from donations. You certainly can support the show, but that's not what this is about. This is more about protecting people who are involved with gold money and telling people just to think for yourself. Make sure to do your own research. Okay, cheers, guys. Be good.